All right. Oh, it started. Hey, everybody. So today, I didn't even put a title. Anyway, and it's a little dark up in here right now, which I don't like. Let me get the lighting proper, y'all. So we can talk. We're talking about childhood traumas, which is something we don't talk about. We talk about it, but we're gonna get a little more in depth. That's better. You have questions, comments, make sure that you put it below. Let me just make sure. Nubia, turn that fan off over there. I need quiet, please, because I need to focus. All right, y'all. Sorry about that. Let's see. So I was supposed to do a what do you call that? A Google Hangout yesterday. About this very topic, but I got so caught up in doing my book, editing my book. I'm in the process of editing my book, which is called The First Ever Parenting Guide, Recreating and Reconceiving Yourself Before the Conception of a Child. That is the title. I know it sounds long, but it's not. It explains what I needed to explain very well. So I'm doing a series of videos these next 3 weeks where I'm going to be talking about the different topics that I talk about in my Evolve the Inner Mother course. And so, the first 2 weeks of Evolve the Inner Mother, which is going to be starting October 1st, by the way. So if you're interested, please go to my website, www.mommyevolve.com. To the services page, and you'll find that. And so the first 2 weeks, we talk about childhood, healing your childhood traumas and understanding your mother. And so hence the title of this, Understanding Your Childhood Wounds and Understanding Your Mother, or Healing Your Childhood Wounds and Understanding Your Mother. And so that's why we're going to have this conversation. We're having this conversation today about that. And if you don't know, my name is Cecile. And I am the creative director, CEO of Mommy Evolve. Ironically, it says I love tea, but it's coffee up in there, okay? I found some Khalifa milk. The Khalifa almond milk, if you don't know. It's banging. It's like the best. It's like if you make it at home, but you don't have to go through all of that. And I have that Khalifa creamer in it. All right, let's jump to it. So childhood traumas. I have my notes here. So childhood wounds, traumas, however you would like to describe it. All of us have them, right? And we all come to this earth with our experiences from past lives, our sensibilities, our personalities, all of that. We have that already in our soul. And so our traumas are individual based on what we need and what is done to us and how we feel that, right? So for some people, certain things will not be a trauma, but for others it would be. And I think that that is my premise and my understanding of why that is, right? That's why you can grow up in the same household with, your siblings, and the same experience will be thought of differently. Okay, so everybody could have experienced one thing that for me would have been a trauma, but for the other person would have been that's not a big deal type thing, right? And so that's the number one thing to understand. And that's important to understand because you have to be okay with the fact that something may have hurt you as a child, because a lot of us don't even want to come to that understanding, or to that being okay with that, right? Because if it didn't hurt, our siblings were like, oh, well, that's not a big deal, right? But if it hurts you, it's still valid, it's still relevant, it's still something that you need to work through in order to get yourself to the point that you need to get to. And that's the critical thing to understand and to work with. So today I'm actually going to speak about a specific childhood wound, and that is the wound of trust. Trust. Let me type that in there. Trust. Trust. Okay. Being able to trust ourselves as individuals, etc., is something that we learn in childhood through, hey, Nefertiti, thank you for tuning in. And Nazi Love, oh, I got international folks today. Okay. Trinidad and Jamaica. Yes.
Can I say hi?
Not right now. I'm doing something. Nubia says hi, Nefertiti. So, trust is a potent wound because it really literally affects every single thing that you do after that, in terms of how you trust yourself when it comes to your gifts, how you trust people in relationships, people on the job. I mean, trust is so potent that, in childhood, we are to learn trust by interacting with others and observing others and how they interact with you, how they respond to you in terms of your needs, whether or not you were soothed as a child. So were you soothed in terms of, if something happened to you or if you cried a lot, did people just say, oh, stop crying, that's not important? Or did they really take the time to soothe you and to really understand what is going on with you? Okay. Those kinds of things affect how you interpret the world. Okay. It affects how you interpret the world and how you feel in the world. Do you feel safe in this world, knowing that you have people that are trustworthy and that find you important enough to ensure that you are safe? Okay. And a lot of us deal with this because we didn't trust our parents' reactions, for example. So, they may fly off the handle, at the drop of a dime, and that makes us feel very unsafe, right? Because it's like I can't gauge what is going to be done. There's no consistency. And that really affects the way that you build consistency within yourself, the way that you soothe yourself. Think about it. If you grew up in a situation where you always felt safe, loved, soothed, then you're probably quite good at doing those things to yourself. Unfortunately, for various reasons, and that's something that I go into in the Evolve the Inner Mother class, we don't get that. Our parents may have worked too much, or we may be they just didn't have that in order to give us, because they didn't get it either. Okay. But that still doesn't mean that that level of trust was not established and that now you have to work through that. So the question is, how do you work through that? Right. Other ways that it manifests is in our expectations from others. For me, I have a hard time, or I had a hard time trusting a lot of things and people, because I didn't feel that level of safety. And in fact, I worked very hard and continue to work very hard on healing my root chakra and feeling that level of safety. And now that I'm older, I understand that I have to give myself that level of safety by trusting myself. And so I go within a lot, and I work on my intuition and trusting my intuition, following my hunches, just doing what it is that I want to do, basically, and trusting that inner guidance is powerful enough for me. Right. And that is something that is modeled, again, if you get that proper foundation and groundation in your upbringing. But many of us don't get that. Okay. But that does not mean that you should stay in a non-trusting mentality. Okay. It may also show up in gullibility. Okay. And trusting everything because you didn't have, again, a gauge and a value system to base what you trust off of. Does that make sense? So you can either go to an extreme or you can go to a high extreme or a low extreme when it comes to, these gaps of childhood wounds being filled, right? So, for example, I had two older brothers and a little sister. And so, sister, that sisterly vibe and all of that. And then, of course, my mother was always working, et cetera, et cetera. So I always felt like I didn't have that like sisterly vibe. And so at some point in my life, I tried to attach to people and was extra clingy, right? When I was younger. And then at some point in my life, I completely detached, right? And now I have found balance and I know how to balance, just being who I authentically am and finding those spaces and areas of sisterhood to attach to in a healthy way. Right. So that's some of the things that you end up learning and working through. So now we're talking about, okay, childhood wounds, that trust. I think we understand and have established how that can be a wound and how that can affect you. So now the question is, when you're working on your ability to trust now, how do you do that? It requires, first, within you, a lot of honesty within yourself, about what it is that you want out of life. And that can be with anything. Like, for example, for me, I've made a lot of changes recently in trusting myself in terms of jobs. For so much of my life, I have run around doing jobs that I could not stand doing, when I knew that within me was a mogul and that I needed to be birthing my own corporation. And I finally made the decision to trust the universe, what the universe has been telling me, and trust myself and just be like, you know what? Mommy Evolve is on the move. Okay. Can I get an amen? Can I get a, okay. Because that is your inner guide pushing you, and even though we have been disconnected, we may have been disconnected from that through various childhood wounds. We can certainly rebuild that in ourselves. And that is a critical point that I lead with in Mommy Evolve. This is not about, staying in the mindset of the wound. No. It's about recognizing it. First thing, you have to identify it. And when you do identify it, you need to make sure that you see it in all of the ways that it infiltrates your life. Because this trust wound, I'm telling you, it's a central wound. It's a central wound. So first you have to identify it in order to weed it out. Okay. So for example, if you decide that you are going to start working on your trust wound is a childhood wound that you're weeding out. Once you identify it, if you feel that someone is being dishonest with you, you have to broach that conversation, or you have to separate yourself from a person that you know is dishonest. But again, it starts within you. If you know that you're being dishonest with yourself about anything, okay, like recently, let me be the 3,000 with you, not even 100, 3,000. Okay. I recently had to be real with myself about my weight loss and my up and down thing with weight loss. Because a lot of us as Black women especially, we can get into this mindset that, being overweight is okay because, this is commonplace in our community and I'm fake and I got all the right curves and all this other stuff. But the truth of the matter is I had to get real with myself. I eat emotionally. And so that makes me eat more. I do not feel comfortable being not this size that I am at the present moment because I have been smaller. Okay, much smaller, like 60, 70 pounds smaller. And that was a good base for me, right? But I have been deluding myself, thinking, that I was okay simply because I didn't want to do the work. Simply because I didn't want to do the work and because I don't know what's on the other side of all my hard work. And that's a critical thing too. A lot of us don't want to change because we don't know if the change is going to be worth it. We don't want to heal that childhood wound because we feel like somebody else is going to come and rescue us. But you're no longer a child. And so there's nobody to rescue you. You have to be the rescue for yourself. That childhood stage has passed where you can feel like perhaps somebody is going to come. I can tell you that nobody is going to come. And even if you have mentors, you still have to do the work. There's no going around that. There's no going around that. Okay. So trust. How do you trust? Because the truth of the matter is that distrust creates disconnection and it fosters poor communication and a distance mentally and spiritually. Okay. When you don't trust, you're capable of doing things that your higher self would not typically do. All right. And so going back to the example that I just gave you, my higher self doesn't want to be in an unhealthy state physically. All right. Let's also talk about how this distrust that festers in you for so many years as a child, from childhood, spills over into other areas. So the other areas could be your relationships, definitely. Turn that light back on.
The one in the kitchen?
No, the one that you just unplugged.
Oh.
The other ways that distrust affects you, right? So it could be in your relationships. You can have no trust in in your marriage situation or your boyfriend, whatever situation, your love relationships, your friend relationships. You could always question people. Right. Exactly, Nefertiti. There's no authenticity of self when you cannot trust. You're always showing up as a representative for that person. Because if you don't trust that person that you're interacting with, then you don't trust yourself to be your authentic self with that person. You're showing a representative. So that's why I said it starts in you. You have to be honest with you about everything. You have to be honest with you. Okay? And to build that trust, you really have to question yourself and ask yourself, what am I not trusting myself with that I need to learn to trust myself with first? Okay? Where am I not giving myself consistency? Where am I not giving myself the consistency that is required for my personal ascension? What am I doing to create trusting relationships? Okay, these are very critical questions to ask yourself. Because again, if you're not putting yourself in that seat, then you're not going to learn how to look at something else, another situation, and trust that person or draw conclusions that are going to be based on a clear head. You're going to be basing the decisions on the wound. So another area where trust is an issue or becomes an issue is in finances. This has been something that I have dealt with a lot, and that is trusting myself to invest in certain or do group economics or those kinds of things. Because it's not something that, it's something that I always heard growing up, that, oh, you got to be careful of those people and blah, 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 which is not untrue, but that's always what's led with. If that's what's always led with, then that's the way you're going to start to think about everything, instead of you trusting your intuition and how you feel inside about the situation, or what you choose to want to gain from the situation, or what others can gain from how it's mutually beneficial. So we really have to think about that in terms of, and really answer those questions. And when you really consider it and go even deeper, when it comes to trust, whether or not you're talking about finances and investing in something, you're talking about relationships, etc. The truth of the matter is that when you really trust, and you trust the divine, and you trust yourself, this simple truth, that everything you need to know and see will be revealed to you. You don't have to run around trying to find evidence of somebody trying to shank you. When you trust and you're in your flow, it reveals itself. Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen? My daughter over here looking at me. Okay, so, we have to really, when we're really in our trusting space, our motives have to be out of love. Our motives have to be out of love, not fear or the secret motive to control. Okay, it has to be out of love, not fear or that secret motive to control. And we see this in our parenting even, yes.
Today on TikTok, I get to saw a capuchin. It's a kind of monkey.
Okay, make sure you finish this.
Okay.
Because when I'm done, I need to wash your hair. This shows up in our parenting too. Our lack of trust. Our lack of trust in ourselves when we even first have a child. That's something that I deal with in terms of, as a postpartum doula. Women often don't trust what they feel about what's going on with their child. So they're always looking outside of themselves. The doctor, and that is quite dangerous, because basically you're putting yourself in a situation where, when you don't trust, you're putting yourself in a situation where somebody else's opinions, feelings, thoughts, and ways of doing things is what is key, or what is running your life when you consider it. And so, if you want to talk about control, if you want to be in self-control and in control of yourself, then you have to trust yourself then. That's the catch. That's the catch. So, and as I said, this doing things out of fear, or the secret motive to control, shows up in parenting a lot. We want to make sure that our children does what society says, because if they don't do what society says, then then they're not going to be good in society's eyes. Think about it. We don't trust their natural inclinations because we think that there's something wrong with it if it doesn't flow with society. If it does flow with society, then we're like, great. We want to turn children into math whizzes and all of that, because, STEM and STEAM are the buzzwords in education now. And I'm not saying that it's not a bad thing to understand math, but everybody understands it differently. Why can't they understand math and trust their own gift? Let's say they love, dance. There's math and dance. You just have to rise to the occasion to understand how it relates as a parent, and trust your child's natural inclinations. All right. So trust, that childhood wound of trust, I really just wanted to drop those words for you to just think about how that may have affected you and how you are manifesting that now, and how it may continue to show up even when you feel like you've done the work. Because when these kinds of wounds are deep, and it's scientific and spiritual and everything else, we know that by the age of 6 or 7, children basically have their core personality is already there. And a lot of basically everything that we teach them before that age sticks with them. So if they hear certain things or see certain things a lot by that age, it's like infused in their personality. And so we really have to be mindful in that regard. But we also have to be mindful of what we have been sitting with for 30, 40, 50, how many ever years, and how that may continue to manifest because it continues to go deep. You know how they say there's levels to this? There is. Even when you feel like you have healed a certain part of you in trusting, and you may have, started to do things to heal that wound and gotten over it and been able to infuse that, and it may show up again in other ways. So just be mindful of that, and be okay with it, and just, do the self-care and the self-work to continue to heal it deeper. It's not without cause, and it's not without its ramifications. The ramifications of doing your healing work is that you have that wisdom to share with your children, and in the way that you're living your life, you are teaching through what you do. Okay. So it is definitely worth the work. So I just came to say those things and to share that with you. I am going to be doing these once a week. So next week, Sunday, I will be doing another one. Sunday or Monday, I'll be doing another one. Leading up to the Evolve the Inner Mother class, as I said, you can go to my website, mommyevolve.com. This video, if you want to come back to it and listen to it, is going to be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Mommy Evolve. So definitely go on over and subscribe to that channel, because I'll be having many videos there. And I look forward to interacting with you all some more. But yes, trust, the childhood wound of trust. Let's think about that and start to trust ourselves more, so that we can integrate that trust in the way that we interact with our child and our children. Okay. Let us be unapologetic about it too. All right. Let's be open and honest about it. All right. If there's no questions or other comments, then I will be out. All right. If there's any questions, please do write it below, even after. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye.